Hello everyone, back tuning in to Gaz on your bank holiday Monday. So as is traditional now at Gaz on a bank holiday, we're doing a historic video, and this one is looking at 1980s summer. So it's part 2 of the 1980s summers. The May Day bank holiday Monday historic video looked at the summers of 1984, 1985 and 1986. We've got another 3 summers to look at for this second 1980s summers video, and that's going to be 1987, 1988 and 1989. So we've got 3 more summers to go through from the 1980s for this bank holiday Monday. Big thank you to everybody for tuning in on this bank holiday Monday. And just say about the websites that we use for the historic videos, because in a way I'm just the narrator of the story, but the way the videos work, what really brings them together is both the charts that we get from weathercentral.de. They've got an extensive archive of historic weather charts going back to 1871. And also, of course, Trevor Harley's personal weather website, where we get most of the information from that you hear in these historic videos. And I think it's really the combination of the information from Trevor Harley and the archive of charts of weathercentral.de that makes the historic videos what they are. And I couldn't do the historic vids at Gaz without those 2 elements coming together. So a big thank you to Weather Central and a big thank you to Trevor Harley. You can find a link to both of those resources on the links page, and you can while away many a happy hour on a bank holiday Monday. I've done so myself at weathercentral.de and Trevor Harley's website, looking back in the archives and looking back over past weather. It's going to be quite a long video, of course, because we've got 3 summers to get through. So if you can't watch all in one go, don't worry, it will be kept at the website indefinitely within our historic section. You get to that via the buttons at the top of the page. I'm not sure how many historic videos we've got now. I've been doing them ever since I started Gazovitz in 2012. So I'll have to have a count and to see how many we've got, but we certainly must be over 30 by now, I would have thought. So it'll be added to all the other historic videos, and you can come back and watch it whenever you want. Just say again, big thank you to everybody for tuning in on your bank holiday Monday. So we're going to start off with the summer of 1987 first of all. Now there is kind of an idea behind this. So the last video, which dealt with 84, 85 and 86, started with a very good summer in 1984. I mean, it had 2 very poor summers. Now, the idea with this part 2 is that we're going to start with 2 very poor summers, and then we're going to end with a really good summer. So kind of many poor summers bookended by 2 really good summers, and the best is to come right at the end in terms of hot weather, but I'll wait until we get to that. So we're starting off with the summer of 1987, which was again a very poor summer. We start with April, which is actually a very warm month indeed. This is the 1st of April 1987, where we have a weather system moving south across the country. Then we get this cut-off low developing down to the south of us by the 5th of April, and we're bringing up a lot of wet weather into southern parts of the country with that. It doesn't really look like much of a month at this stage, but it actually is the second warmest April of the 20th century, with a century temperature of 10.3. And some places did have their warmest April on record. So at some point, very quickly, you will think high pressure is going to be building in. We go through to the 10th, and still not much sign of that high pressure. But by the 13th, maybe the Azores high is beginning to throw its hand, possibly throwing up a ridge. And by the 14th and into the 15th, yes, we are starting to see that high pressure starting to take over now, pulling up by the 17th, some much warmer air from the south. We go beyond that into the 20th, and it started to turn a little bit more unsettled again, with more rain coming in to the northwest. But by the 23rd of April, again, that high pressure is back for St George's Day, and it's starting to pull up much warmer, very warm, southerly, southeasterly winds. The highest temperature for this month was 23.7 at Aberdeen Airport on the 27th, 24.9 at Kelso in the Borders, and also 24 Celsius at Norwich on the 29th as well, under this big ridge of high pressures dragging up this very warm air from the south. So a proper summery spell of weather here through the second half of April 1987, although by the 30th it started to turn a little more unsettled. And then that takes us into May, and the interesting thing about May 1987 is that it's actually cooler than the April before it, and that's the only time in the 20th century that happened, that May comes out cooler than April. This May has a central temperature of 10.1, whereas April 1987 has a central temperature of 10.3. So there wasn't much in it, but just about May 1987 was cooler than April 1987. We have quite a bit of high pressure here through the early part of the month, so still trying to hang on to that sort of dry, fairly warmish spell that we had in April. But the high pressure is more centred out to the west of the country in this month, so very regularly we're bringing the air down from more of a northwesterly type direction. By the 14th of May 1987, it's actually starting to turn very unsettled, with low pressure really starting to take over to the north and the east. And then by the 18th, that low pressure just really sitting there over top of the country, bringing showers or longer spells of rain. Up to the 21st, notice high pressure is still out to westward, still bringing down these very cool northerly winds. As we run up to the end of the month, where we find high pressure going much further north, and we're bringing in more of an easterly type influence there. And it still looks pretty unsettled, really. It wasn't much of a month at all, May 1987. And then we move through into June, and this is a pretty dismal start to the summer of 1987, to say the least. It's the dullest June on record, with an average of only 4.09 hours of sunshine per day. And in June, of course, the longest days of the year occur in June. That really is very, very poor. It's also a cool and wet month, very poor month indeed. The best weather was to be found actually in the Outer Hebrides to the northwest of the country. So we start the summer of 1987 on an unsettled note. Low pressure is coming through the country early in the month, bringing showers or longer spells of rain, and then we go up to the 6th and we get a classic summer storm there, a 990 millibar area of low pressure, bringing gales across the country on the 6th and into the 7th of June 1987. Really cool, wet and windy stuff going on there. We move through to the 11th of June, and it's still looking very unsettled, and these unsettled conditions stay with us then up to the middle part of the month. 15th of June 1987 is quite interesting, because there's a notable thunderstorm. There are notable thunderstorms across East Anglia, with deep hail cover in Cambridge. 71 millimetres of rain fell on this day, 15th of June 1987, in Sudbury. So it remains very cool, very unsettled through much of June 1987. Here we go on the 19th. We get another area of low pressure heading in off the Atlantic, bringing yet more dull, wet and cool weather. These dismal conditions continue up to the 22nd, and it stays generally quite unsettled up to the 25th, although you notice that a bit of a ridge is starting to develop down to the south of the country. And then right at the very end of the month, we do get a change, with a hotter spell of weather developing, courtesy of the blessed Azores High. There's the Azores High down there. It's throwing up a ridge across France, and that ridge is just about enough to start to pull up some hotter air from the south. As we go through to the end of the month, we do get hotter weather. 30 degrees, 86 Fahrenheit is recorded on this day, the 29th of June 1987. And that's how we end June 1987. Still with quite a bit of hot weather down in the south, starting to look cooler, unsettled and wetter again up to the north. Despite that warm end, it's a very cool month, really. A central temperature of just 12.8 degrees. Very poor indeed. And then we move through to July 1987, where we're finding a bit of a ridge trying to build down to the south. Now, this is a month of two halves, July 1987. It has a fairly dry, quite warm spell in the first half of the month, and then the second half of the month becomes very, very poor indeed. So early on, we do get this build of pressure from the Azores again. This is the 4th of July 1987, where we're building the ridge up from the Azores high across the country. That looks really quite pleasant. So on the 5th and the 6th of July 1987, under this ridge, we actually see temperatures again going up to around 30 degrees into the mid-80s Fahrenheit. So even in very poor summers, you do often find that you can get some hotter weather at times indeed. However, this ridge, it's quite flimsy and it's not going to last as we go through to the 7th onto the 8th. You notice it's being put under pressure. We're starting to bring down cooler air from the northwest already, and the ridge is just kind of weakening. We get through to the 10th, and this area of low pressure out to the west of us is pushing in a weather front. That means a lot of rain to the English-Scottish borders, where 70 millimetres of rain falls in some places. The Azores High, or the ridge from the Azores High, still just about clinging on across the south, still reasonably dry and warm for southern areas, but the days are numbered for this ridge really. As we go through to the 11th, then on to the middle part of the month, we find that the ridge is increasingly weakening. Actually, we're starting to try and pull up a little bit of a Spanish plume there on the 14th and into the 15th. Does briefly turn quite hot, I think, down in the southeast, and possibly with thunderstorms. But it's these areas of low pressure out in the west that are gathering, putting this ridge that's now over Scandinavia under further pressure. And by the time we go through to the 16th and then into the 19th of July, we are going into a proper unsettled pattern. Then trough of low pressure is centred over top of the country, bringing showers or longer spells of rain. Trevor Hardy writes that the period from the 14th of July to the 13th of August was exceptionally cool, wet and windy at times, very dull. In this period, Luton records only 80 hours of sunshine, with just 25 hours from the 14th of July to the end of the month in Luton. There's notable thunderstorms as well. 88 millimetres of rain falls at Slapton on the 17th, and 50 millimetres of rain 20 minutes at Epping on the 29th. So it's a really unsettled end to July 1987. The ridge is out to west, low pressures to the east and southeast, bringing in these very cool and pretty dismal north to northeasterly winds. We run up to the end of the month and we find that high pressure still centred out to west, still bringing down these cool northerly winds. They're showery winds as well, producing heavy showers and possibly thunderstorms in places as well. That's how we end July 1987, with a cool northwesterly wind coming down across the country. There's probably showers up in the north as well. We head through into August, and August 1987 sort of rounds off what's a very poor summer. July has a centering temperature just 15.9, following on from the June centering temperature 12.8. August 1987 has a centering temperature just 15.6. Again, generally cool, wet and cloudy, but there is a drier, warmer spell in the middle part of the month. So early in the month again, you see the high pressure here on the 3rd is out to west, bringing down these cool, showery northwesterly winds. Again, heading up to the 10th, and it remains pretty dismal, really. Low pressure is driving it off the Atlantic. These aren't tremendously unsettled charts, but they are enough to still be producing showers or longer spells of rain. The air's off the Atlantic, so it's generally quite cool, and it's pretty unsettled as well. But things do improve a little bit from the middle part of the month. This is the 14th and on to the 16th. You see high pressure is building from the south. It is ridging, starting to pull up some warmer air from the south. So briefly, through this middle part of the month, we do turn things hotter, although there are thunderstorms. It's in unstable air mass. There are thunderstorms within these hotter conditions, but overall still pretty unsettled up to the north and west. The 20th of August brings high pressure down to the south and to the east of the country. On the 21st of August, this day, there's a violent thunderstorm breaking out. It brings 86 millimetres of rain to Red Wharf Bay in Anglesey, and 77 millimetres of rain to Chigwell in Essex. That's on the 22nd. Flooding in Essex on the 22nd. Large hailstones and up to 15 centimetres of depth of hail in Colchester through this period. So it's a very unstable period. We're trying to turn things hotter with this ridge out to the east of us, but really it's these areas of low pressure that are dominating. So the low pressure is combining with the heat and the instability to be producing some very violent thunderstorms. You see, it is pretty warm, actually fairly hot down in the southeast. I would have thought that could be lifting temperatures close to 30 degrees. It's pretty mediocre stuff by modern UK summer standards, but it's reasonably warm, if not hot, for this particular summer, which is a very poor summer overall. As I say, this day, 22nd, produces those violent thunderstorms down across Essex and down through into Colchester as well. There's 114 millimetres of rain in 9.5 hours at Stafford on the 23rd, this day, as low pressure is taking over. It's probably an active front there through the country, producing a lot of heavy rain. And then it stays unsettled then through to the end of the month. Notice this area of low pressure heading in from the east, bringing a lot of really wet weather to eastern parts of the country at the end of August 1987. However, right at the very end of the month, we do get a little bit of a build of pressure. Once again, high pressure starts to slip back in, giving us a quieter end to what has been a very poor summer. And then as we go through into September, there's no real Indian summer here. We find low pressure coming back in off the Atlantic quite quickly, and overall September 1987 is an unsettled month, although it does finish up with quite a decent build of high pressure right at the very end of September 1987. Right, we're going to go through to 1988 next, which is our next summer. I'm going to start again in April 1988. So this is quite an interesting month. It has a central temperature of 8.2, so it's not overly warm or cold, but it does have a lot of alternating type weather. It has a really good go at getting really quite cold, but it never really comes to a great deal. Of course, this follows on from the exceptionally mild winter of 87-88, which was the first of a sequence of very mild winters that occurred at the end of the 1980s. There was 3 in a row at the end of the 1980s into the start of the 1990s. But April 1988 actually does have a go, bringing some colder conditions. So we begin with high pressure ridging through the country, and we get quite a contrast in temperatures. So, for example, as we go through to the 6th of April 1988, we've got this high pressure ridging through, bringing a lot of dry and warm weather, and that lifts temperatures to 20 degrees on this day, 6th of April 1988 in Aviemore. But if we go on just another couple of days, that high pressure pulls out to the west. We bring down these much colder northerly winds, and that sees temperatures plummeting across Aviemore. And on this day, the 8th, just 2 days after recording 20 degrees, we only get a maximum of 5 degrees. And there's a minimum later on in the month on the 13th of minus 8.1. So Aviemore really does have a wild ride through this particular month. Quite cold then through the first week to 10 days of April 1988, with the wind generally coming down from the north. We move through to the middle part of the month. This is the 13th, and this is when we have that temperature of -8 being recorded at Abbeymoor, -8.1. But then there's going to be another change, and as we go through to the middle part of the month, we start to bring low pressure in from the Atlantic, so it turns more unsettled. Also starts to turn a lot warmer as well as we begin to drag up air from the southwest. So as we move through to the 18th and then head through to the 21st, we find that much warmer air has pushed up from the south. And actually on this day, the 18th of April 1988, we recorded a temperature of 21.3 degrees at Conisbee in Lincolnshire, albeit there would have been outbreaks of rain out to the western part of the country. Now by the 21st, we are trying to build a proper blocking feature across Greenland. So it really is having a go at getting us into a very cold pattern. But we have got this area of high pressure still across France. It's acting as a little bit of a buffer. 22nd, it's starting to pull down some colder air into the north and the northeast. But again, it just doesn't quite come to anything. So as we go through to 25th and then up to the end of the month, we're beginning to drag up the air from the southwest yet again. That's a very near-miss type month in terms of cold weather. That could easily, if it had gone slightly differently, that could easily have been a memorably cold April in 1988. Now we head through into May, and we start May 1988 on a very unsettled note. This area of low pressure down to the south of the country, throwing up bands of rain across the country too. So a really wet and unsettled beginning to May 1988. This month has a central temperature of 11.9. It's the first May without a recorded frost, by the way, since 1970. So a long time, actually, since there have been a May without any recorded frost, but this May is going to do it. We head through to the 6th, and again, a little bit of a build of pressure there to the south of the country, and that starts to bring up some much warmer air on the 7th, a little bit of a plume, but of course it's May, so it's not going to last very long. And as we head through into the 8th, we're finding low pressure pushing up from the south, bringing heavy showers, if not thunderstorms, up from the south. There's widespread flooding from these thunderstorms on the 8th and into the 9th in the west of London. 89 millimetres of rain recorded at Ruislip, 25 millimetres rain, just 25 minutes recorded there. Coventry again has that heavy showers and thunderstorms developing through this particular period. So it is a very unsettled period that we have here. Quite warm, but quite unsettled with showers or longer spells of rain and thunderstorms as well. Through to the middle part of May 1988, we've got this ridge building to the north with low pressure down to the southwest. So you get the idea, it was a very unsettled month this. We're frequently bringing up the air from the south or southeast, so it's relatively warm. But with these areas of low pressure, it is really quite unsettled. Bit of a Greenland block setting up on the 16th of May 1988. Obviously, that's not going to do anything particularly cold, although the winds do turn into the north, but they aren't cold enough to be producing much in the way of frost, certainly. And by the 28th of May, the high pressure is back in again over the west of Europe. But then we're back to low pressure once more on the 25th, and we end May 1988 on a very unsettled note with low pressure coming through the country. And then that takes us into June. So we begin summer 1988 on an unsettled note with low pressure dominating weather. However, this is one of the better summer months of this particular period. So it's very dry over England and Wales. It's quite a warm month as well. It has a central temperature of 14.4 degrees. It's particularly warm for Scotland. So although we're starting very unsettled, obviously we are going to see something significantly warmer coming along before much longer. And that happens from high pressure building in from the west. So here we are on the 10th of June 1988 with high pressure out to the west of the country, bringing in the air from an easterly direction, which is going to be fairly warm. The source of this air is an Arctic, so it's going to be dragging in the air from sort of central northern parts of Europe, which is going to be relatively warm. And you see there is just high pressure dominating. So on the 13th of June, for example, that high pressure is sitting over the country, producing lots of dry weather. It's all extending from the Azores high. As always, the Azores high brings us our best weather in the summer months, and this is the case in 1988, even in what is going to be a very poor summer overall, does have a decent spell of weather here in June, with that ridge extending through the country from the Azores. So just lots of very quiet and very pleasant weather through that early and middle phase of June 1988. It still continues really up to the 24th, still with this ridge centred out to the west, so it's not overly hot at any point, but it's just very pleasant, dry, and lots of fine conditions. Now, by the end of the month, we are beginning to see that ridge weakening. Pressure is beginning to leak away to the south and to the east, with gradually, day by day, turning more unsettled. This takes us to the end of the month, and yes, by the 30th of June 1988, we're back under low pressure. So clearly the pattern is deteriorating quite significantly, and that takes us into July 1988. Now, if June 88 is remembered as a fairly decent summer month overall, July 1988 is remembered possibly as one of the worst summer months of the 20th century, certainly one of the worst Julys of the 20th century. It has a centering temperature of just 14.7, utterly dismal, and Trevor Harley writes that it's an unremittingly disturbed month. It was dull and cold. The temperature didn't exceed 21 degrees 70 Fahrenheit in many parts of the south throughout the whole month. I'll say that again. The temperature throughout this month did not exceed 21 Celsius 70 Fahrenheit throughout most of the month. Even London failed to exceed 22 Celsius during this month. The highest temperature throughout the whole month in Plymouth was just 18.3, utterly dismal, and Land's End, their highest recorded temperature this month was beneath 16 degrees Celsius. Not only was it very dismally cool, if not cold, it was the wettest July since 1936 in the south, and the wettest July of the 20th century across Scotland. It rained somewhere across the UK every day of the month in Cumbria and also in western and southern Scotland. And there was 23 days out of 31 this month where it rains over most parts of the UK. There hasn't been a colder July since, thankfully. So we start off, as we mean to go on, with low pressure centred over the country, and obviously you can imagine this is just going to be a very, very poor month. So low pressure is over the country throughout this opening period. This is the 4th, this is the 6th. Low pressure just centred across the country, basically parked with a trough within the 500 millibar flow over the UK. There is northern blocking in play as well, that's keeping this low pressure locked in over the UK. More low pressure driving in off the Atlantic on the 10th. That's bringing wet and windy weather then, and it just stays unsettled through to the 11th, on to the 12th, up to the 14th. Low pressure remains very much locked in over the top of the country. Up to the 15th, we do try and get a little bit of a ridge from the Azores, but it's not really going to come to anything by the 17th. The next area of low pressure is sliding down from the northwest. The 19th tries to build a little bit of a ridge to the south, but that very quickly is flattened off by the 24th of July 1988. We're back to dismally cold, wet, and unsettled conditions. And then on the 26th, we get a proper summer gale blowing there across Scotland and Northern Ireland, with no doubt a lot of heavy rain driving in from that dartboard area of low pressure too. 27th to 29th brings more showers or longer spells of rain from this area of low pressure, and we finish up on the 31st looking very unsettled once again. A really, really poor summer month indeed. And these unsettled conditions continue into August as well. Not much information about August 1988. It's remembered as an unsettled mixed month, wet in the west, has a central temperature of 15.2, which is the best of this summer, but that's not saying much. 15.2 for August is still very, very poor overall, and it's still unsettled really here in the opening days. We've still got these westerly winds bringing showers or longer spells of rain, particularly to the north and west. A little bit of a build of pressure there on the 7th. That looks a little bit better, starting to drag up somewhat warmer air, lifting the temperatures perhaps into the 20s Celsius. But it doesn't last very long again, and by the 12th we're back to low pressure. You've guessed it, low pressure is coming back in off the Atlantic, bringing more showers or longer spells of rain, and these unsettled conditions then stay with us up to the 14th and on to the 15th. It remains unsettled, especially so for the north, wet and windy up there, but all places probably having showers or longer spells of rain. The 18th of August 1988 tries to build a bit of a ridge down to the south. Again, very quickly that's flattened off by low pressure rolling back in off the Atlantic. You see the Azores High, even in these poor summers, it has a go at throwing up a ridge, but when it's weak like this, the low pressure is the driving factor, and that keeps things very unsettled. 21st of August 1988 places us in this northerly wind, which looks very cool, as well as bringing showers or longer spells of rain, and up to the final week of the month it just stays unsettled really, with further low pressure driving in off the Atlantic, bringing what is a very cool, very unsettled and miserable end to what was a very, very poor summer, although it did have that slightly better phase through June. July was terrible, and August wasn't anything to write home about. It was a really poor month as well. And these unsettled conditions continue into September, which is described by Trevor Harley as an average month, often unsettled. It has a CET of 13.2. However, something interesting does happen this month. Now, well, we start off really unsettled with gale force winds there on the 3rd of September 1988. A lot of heavy rain as well. But up to the 5th and then to the 6th, we are actually building some pressure up from the south. That hasn't happened throughout the whole summer really, but ridging is occurring, and it's building up from the south, and as we go through to the 7th, actually it looks like we're bringing up some very warm weather. Now, I don't know much about this. I was when this was taking place, how old would I have been? I would have been sort of 10 going on virtually 11, so I don't know much about this, but the upper air temperatures as we go through to the 8th are very impressive. Look at that, we're bringing up a 20 Celsius isotherm there on the 8th of September 1988. Now, I've had a look at Trevor Harley's website, and I can't really see any information about this, but it does look as though just for a day or two in September 1988, it must have turned really very warm, if not hot, unless there was a lot of cloud associated with this, which would have limited the temperatures, of course. But potentially 20 Celsius isotherm on the 8th of September. That should be lifting temperatures close to 30 degrees, I would have thought. So if anybody remembers this, if anybody knows anything about this, please let me know how warm it did actually get between the 6th and the 8th of September 1988. It looks as though it should have got hot, but I can't find much information. In any case, very quickly this ridge is going to start to get broken down, although it is still clinging on across England and Wales on the 10th of September, but by the 12th we're back into a much cooler, much more unsettled pattern. I would assume there was a very dramatic drop in temperature taking place around this time, the 10th to the 12th to the 14th. I imagine there would have been a big drop, big plunge in the temperature. And then as we go through into the second half of the month, again, we try and keep some high pressure close to the south and west, not in a hot position this time. The final week of September 1988 turns increasingly unsettled and stormy. So that brings to an end yet another dismal summer. We have now had 4 really poor summers on the trot. We've had 1985, we've had 1986, we've had 1987, we've had 1988. 4 very grim summers on the bounce, but it's all about to change. It's going to change with the summer of 1989. We've waited a very long time for a hot summer. We're going to get one now. But we're going to start off with a really cool month. We started off in April 1989, which has a central temperature of just 6.6, very cold month. And there is actually a heavy snow through the opening period. I bet you wasn't expecting to hear about snow in this video, but we had the area of high pressure here over Scandinavia on the 1st of April 1989, and by the 3rd we're actually bringing in an unusually cold easterly wind. Look at that, proper easterly winds are coming in from the 3rd and into the 4th. This is bringing snow showers into eastern parts of the country, and in fact there was a heavy snowfall in London, can you believe? There's the upper air temperatures. They don't look outrageously cold, but the -5 isotherm is cleared of the country, which is very unusual for April. And very unusual for this period, of course, because remember, this is following on from yet another very mild winter. We had that first very mild winter of 87-88. Now we have a second very mild winter, virtually snowless, of 88-89. There's going to be another mild winter after that for 89-90. But we do get a little taste of winter here in April 1989. Proper easterly winds are coming in there on the 5th. There's low pressure to the south, and actually we get 18 centimetres of snow in Tadworth in Surrey, being dragged in by those cold and wintry easterly winds. I can remember even in Northamptonshire there was quite a bit of snow, in terms of snow showers anyway, through this period. Running up to the 8th, it's staying unsettled and cold. We've lost that easterly wind, so the worst of the cold weather is going, but it is staying unsettled. But now we're going to get a storm coming in on the 11th of April 1989. We get a gust of 100 miles an hour, gust of wind of 100 miles an hour recorded at Milford Haven when pressure was exceptionally low for the time of year. This area of low pressure driving in these bands of rain. And there's the severe gales that's battering northern parts of the country. We move through to the middle part of the month. It stays unsettled again. You notice the jet stream is to the south of the country on a northwest-southeast trajectory, bringing low pressure through. So it's cold and unsettled with showers or longer spells of rain. The upper air temperatures are recovering here as we go through to the 17th. We're bringing the wind back in from the east, but now we've lost the cold temperatures. As we go through to the end of the month, running up towards the end of the month, we're getting high pressure building to the north. Proper Greenland blocking there started to turn the wind back into the north and northeast for the final days of April 1989. And we finish it as we started it, really cold and unsettled with showers and longer spells of rain, probably cold enough still for sleet or snow over high ground in the north. The final day of the month begins to show a change. The area of high pressure is down across the Azores, and it's starting, yes, to build a bit of a ridge up across the country. And so that takes us into May 1989, which is a very dry, very sunny and very warm month. It has a centering temperature of 13.0. There's over 300 hours of sunshine, widely recorded for the first time since 1909, when sunshine records were first kept during this month, May 1989, the beginning of a superb extended summer. Some parts of London have no rain at all through this month. but there is a very exceptional rainfall event that happens later on in the month. We begin here on the 1st of May 1989 with high pressure to the south, low pressure up to the north and the west. This ridge builds up from the south. By the 4th of May 1989, high pressure is dominating, and it's there up to the 7th as well, bringing lots of dry, fine and warm weather. The 10th of May finds that high pressure pulling out to the west, and we start to bring down somewhat cooler air from the north. And then it looks like it's trying to turn and settle. Now, I'm not sure how much rain there was in this period, because as I say, down across London, there wasn't any recorded rain all month through May 1989. But clearly further north and northeast, there must have been some rainfall in places. But by the 15th, the high pressure is back in the ridge from the Azores, building across northern France again, starting to turn things much drier and warmer down across the south as well. And then we run up to the 17th, still under high pressure, and that high pressure dominating to the 18th, and we get to the 19th, and this is a very interesting day, the 19th of May 1989. It has 83 millimetres of rain falling in 2 hours from a multicellular thunderstorm across the Halifax area, and approximately 193.2 millimetres of rain fell at somewhere called Welshorden Lodge near Hebden Bridge, and that was within a 2-hour period. This is the record daily rainfall for May and the most intense 2-hour rainfall recorded in Britain. So it really was a tremendous thunderstorm that occurred on this day in 1989. It's known as the Halifax storm, and it's associated with high pressure, but the air is being forced up from the Pennines, associated with a cold front. So you've got high pressure dominating, but there's a cold front within the high pressure. You can probably make it out somewhere around there. It's hot to the south of the front and cool to the north. On this morning, the 19th of May 1989, we have a minimum temperature of -2 in northeastern Scotland. Yet to the south, it's hot, so we've got a big temperature gradient. A southeast breeze pushed hot air into the frontal zone, and then that went up the mountains. The downpour started at around 4 p.m. There was flash flooding, which led to damage, carrying trees and destroying small footbridges. However, less than 5 kilometres away, actually just 7 millimetres of rain fell. So it was a very unique event, this. Tremendous rainfall within a very small and specific area. But if you happen to have been under that rainfall in Halifax, my word, you must really have known about it indeed. That's how the upper air temperatures are looking on the 19th of May 1989. Again, you do see the temperature gradient. So the cold front would have been somewhere around here across the central zone of the country. It is very warm to hot down to the south of it. It's a lot cooler up to the north. Now we get through to the 21st, and any thoughts of severe storms and flooding are over, and we're back to high pressure. 27 degrees is recorded at Skye on the 21st on this day, and that's going into the 80s Fahrenheit, of course, in the far north of Scotland from these hot southerly southeasterly winds. Moving beyond that, we get to the 23rd. It's a very hot day. 29 Celsius is recorded at Heathrow, and there's also some thunderstorms in the Midlands on the 24th. Within this heat and instability, we're generating quite severe thunderstorms here, 23rd, 24th of May 1989. And we get temperature going up to 29.9 degrees in March in Cambridgeshire, which I think is the maximum for the month on the 24th of May 1989. We end the month with the high pressure again pulling out to the west of us, bringing down a slightly cooler air mass from the north, but a very memorable May with all of that flooding in Halifax, but overall a very warm and very dry month. And then that takes us to June, which is the start of a hot summer, a genuinely hot summer. This month has a very warm spell, but it starts off on quite a cool note. We've got these northerly winds coming down across the country here on the 3rd. They continue up to the 4th as well. And it's a little bit more unsettled as well. There's low pressure within these northerly winds, so presumably there must have been some showers or longer spells of rain. I remember the summer of 1989 as being a very dry, very hot summer, very little rain, but obviously there must have been some rain at times, and this is one of the more unsettled periods here on the 6th of June 1989. Up to the 9th, we keep things unsettled out to the west with low pressure heading in from off the Atlantic. But then we're going to get a warmer spell developing as we go through to the middle part of the month. So again, we've got the high pressure building here to the east, low pressure out to the west. We're bringing these very warm winds up from the south. And then the high pressure just extending through the country here on the 15th. This sees temperatures going to 27 degrees at Aviemore by the time we get through into the 18th under this area of high pressure that is dominating the weather. Temperatures are going into the 80s Fahrenheit. By the 20th, we're getting temperatures going to 30 degrees, 86 Fahrenheit in Leeds. Hales Owen has its warmest June day since 1976. Although interestingly, it also has this month its coldest June night since 1962. So quite a lot of contrast with the temperatures as you can get actually in notably dry summer months. They can be cold at times by night and very warm at times by day. It was the sunniest June since 1976 as well. So we continue through the month with high pressure dominating till the very end, and then it turns a little bit more unsettled from the north and the west once again. We end June 1989 on a little bit more of a cooler and more unsettled note. And we begin July 1989 on quite an unsettled note as well, with this area of low pressure close to the country. However, that's not going to last very long. High pressure will soon be coming back in, and this is a very warm, very hot month. Actually has a central temperature of 18.2. It's dry, sunny and anticyclonic. Just a classic warm, dry summer month. After the warm June with a CT of 14.6, of course that very warm May of 13.0, this month has a central temperature going above 18 Celsius, which I believe is the first time that has happened, probably since 1983. So high pressure just in and dominating the weather through the early part of the month, and it's going to be indicative of what happens through July 1989 with high pressure bringing dry, sunny and hot conditions across many parts of the country. It turns a little bit cooler here on the 12th. The wind is going into the northwest, a little bit cooler and fresher then. But very quickly the high pressure is building back in again. Classic summer charts. The high pressure is centering over the top of the country, and that takes us to our hottest phase of the summer. The 20th of July 1989 sees the heat really starting to build up. As we go through to the 21st, we're dragging the air up from the south, and this lifts temperatures by the time we get through to the 22nd of July 1989. It's lifting temperatures up to 34.2 degrees, which is the highest temperature that we've recorded since 1976, since the summer of 1976. Of course, the next year, 1990, was to be even better. There's the upper air temperature showing the extent of those hot temperatures pushing up from the south around this period, lifting the temperatures into the low to mid-90s Fahrenheit across many parts of the country. We go through to the latter stages of July 1989. We keep the classic hot weather going. High pressure is dominating through to the end of the month. Turns a little bit more unsettled and cooler for Scotland right at the end of the month, but still the ridge is dominating down across the south. We end up with high pressure out to the west and bringing the air down from more of a northwesterly direction. We move through to August, which again, it's a warm, sunny and dry month, the third sunniest August of the 20th century, and has a central England temperature of 16 0.6. So again, high pressure is very dominant for the opening week. By the 7th, it's turning a little bit more unsettled. And then we do go into a genuinely unsettled period actually around the middle of the month. This area of low pressure would have brought persistent rain to many places and also much cooler westerly winds. So just a little hint of autumn perhaps there through the middle part of August 1989, but probably a welcome relief after that very hot July. However, the heat wave isn't done with us yet, and by the time we go through to the 19th, the Azores high again, it's throwing in yet another ridge, building in yet another ridge across and to the east of the country, bringing the air up from the south again. Looks very warm and dry. Up to the 20th, this day is quite interesting because we see the temperature going to 30.4 degrees at Coltishall in Norfolk, which again, it is quite unusual for that to happen this late on in August. We see the temperature still going above 30 degrees. Doesn't happen all that often, but it is something that you tend to find in the hotter summers. We move through to the end of the month, and again, high pressure is still dominating the weather. Building in from the Azores, a little bit cooler here at the end of the month, but still the basic idea is the same, with high pressure in control, still bringing lots of dry weather, a little bit more unsettled right at the close of the month. And then that takes us to September 1989, which is remembered as another very dry month. So this summer starts in May, it goes on into September. This month has September has a central temperature of 14.7. And again, it's a very dry month and possibly the warmest since 1961. So high pressure remains in control through much of the month. This period just here around the temp does bring some thunderstorms down to the south. There's 31 millimetres of rain falling in half an hour at Dover, but by the same token, earlier on the 7th of September 1989, 27 degrees was recorded widely across the country, and even up to the 21st of September 1989, we're still getting temperatures of 27 degrees at Jersey. So a classically warm and dry month. A little bit more unsettled there around the middle part of the month, but again, look at that, high pressure is back in again around the 20th, 21st, bringing up those really warm, if not hot, southerly winds. And that's how we end the month with high pressure. Look at that, it's still there, still going strong on the 30th of September 1989. A fantastic extended summer. I think you probably have to go back to 1959 to find a summer that is as extended as this. So it begins in May, it's still going on the last day of September. A truly classic hot summer to end the 1980s. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't find many pictures to close off with, but I did manage to find one picture of that Halifax storm in May 1989, the 19th of May 1985. This is the Lluddennan Brook. Don't know if I pronounced that right, but it's a brook in Halifax that did produce a huge amount of flooding, and you can see the fire services actually tending to people's homes that were no doubt very seriously flooded. And that's it. That's the end of our look at the 1980s summer. So in two historic videos, we've done 6 summers. Hope you found it interesting and informative. Around 50 minutes again, so quite a long one, sorry about that, but we did have a lot of information to get through. So between the two videos, they're getting on around 2 hours of information for these 1980s summers. At some point, I may go further back and do 1980, 1981, and 1982. Of course, we've already done 1983 in an earlier historic video. I don't think those summers in the early 80s were all that interesting, but I might go back and do those as well at some point, just so that we've got all of the 1980s summers covered. This is going to be our last historic video until the end of August. The next bank holiday, Monday, will be the August bank holiday. Not sure what we'll be doing for that one. Maybe you can send your ideas through and I'll put them on my to-do list. All it remains is to say thanks for watching on this Bank Holiday Monday, and enjoy what's left of your Bank Holiday. Remember, this historic video will be placed within the historic archive here at Gaz Weatherby, so you can come back and watch it whenever you want. But that's all for now, and have a great Bank Holiday.